All right, this week, lawmakers in Australia passed a sweeping ban on social media for kids under the age of 16. It's now one of the world's toughest measures aimed at protecting young people from potential dangers online. And while it's got broad public support, both in Australia and around the world, critics say this is going to be very difficult to enforce. NBC's Janice Mackey-Frayer has more.
This ban is a world first, but it isn't clear exactly how it will work or if it can work to safeguard kids and teens from the harmful aspects of social media. It puts the onus on platforms like TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, X to figure out how to implement the age restriction. They have a year to do it, then risk facing huge fines if they're found to be allowing underage kids to hold accounts. There's mixed feelings among young people today who say, look, this is the digital age we're living in, and social media is a part of it, and they see it as losing their right to self-expression. Critics say the law was rushed, that it raises privacy concerns, and that it does nothing to actually clean up the platforms and could, in turn, push kids to pursue darker online spaces. But the law has wide support among parents in Australia who are looking for something to protect kids and teens from being exposed to streams of content that are unfiltered and infinite, to change the norms, they say, around social media usage so that it doesn't have to be the defining feature of growing up. Countries around the world are watching this very closely, and some are considering similar bans. In the U.S., more states are looking at how to limit exposure. Australia's government admits the ban is not perfect, and kids are going to find workarounds. The message, they say, is to the social media companies to do better.
That's NBC's Janice Mackey-Frayer reporting. Coming up after a quick break, we're going to discuss whether this step in Australia can be important as a starting point toward regulating social media, or what we can learn from it here in the United States, and why it is, in fact, so hard to tackle the harms that are caused by big tech unless we consider rolling back an entire business model that's built on both algorithms and surveillance. Joining me in a few moments will be Marianne Franks, a top legal expert in civil rights, free speech, and technology, and Roger McNamee, an early investor in Facebook who's been warning for years about big tech's dangerous business model. Joining me now, Marianne Franks, professor of technology and civil rights law at the George Washington Law School. She's the author of the new book, Fearless Speech, Breaking Free from the First Amendment. And Roger McNamee, co-founder of Elevation Partners, former advisor to Mark Zuckerberg, author of the book, Zucked, Waking Up to the Facebook Catastrophe. Good morning to both of you. Thank you for being with us. Roger, as Janice was saying in that piece that she just filed, there's pretty broad agreement that Australia's new law banning social media for kids under 16 is going to be extremely hard to enforce. And in fact, there may be problems that ensue from trying to enforce it, more harms than we were thinking about. But Janice also points out that this is a demonstration of political will where there has been almost none, in terms of regulating big tech. Tell me your take on this move.
So, Ali, the real problem that we have here is that the status quo is intolerable. We have a situation now where teens, but also adults, are being put through emotional stress that humans are not designed to be able to withstand. And all of this is in service of a business model which is adversarial with the people who use it. And the lack of regulation, the lack of rules for big tech has caused it to turn into essentially asbestos, but with better PR and a bigger checkbook. And that is a situation that I think we in America have allowed to happen, and it's harming the entire world. And Australia is saying, you know what, this is the first step. I mean, in reality, I'd like to see them ban the entire business model, to say, like asbestos, I'm sorry, this is just not working. And we have to find a different way to do this.
Marianne, I think you have argued in favor of there being some form of regulation and restriction on what's going on, and particularly as it relates to the harms to children, to young girls in particular. You do warn, though, that this blanket ban might actually cause some other problems for young people. Tell me what you mean by that.
Right. I think that Roger's correct about how we're in a really bad state when it comes to children's access to and addiction to social media, and not just children, it's adults too. But what I worry about is the fact that this ban is relying really heavily on age verification, and we just don't have methods to really show age verification that are accurate without also causing all kinds of unintended consequences, more data collection, more information gathering, more kinds of inferences about human behavior. We don't really want to give these companies more excuses to do that kind of, engage in those kinds of practices. But I'm more worried in some ways about how this ban also says, we're not going to go after messaging. We're not going to go after just a general online access. So you're doing this really kind of strangely selective ban. And I worry that for the kinds of things that many young people are exposed to, things like sexual exploitation and abuse and grooming, it's already hard enough for those minors to come forward and say, I'm, trapped in this kind of cycle with somebody that is trying to harm me. If we now say, well, you're also engaged in something illegal or you weren't supposed to be accessing these platforms at all, I worry that it's going to be one more disincentive for these kids to try to get help before it's too late.
Roger, let's talk about, you had some hope, particularly in the current administration, that they were doing some things, particularly from trade and policy perspectives, to try and improve this situation. It's very clear that the incoming administration in the United States is influenced by very different forces, including the fact that Elon Musk is now central to our government. But you saw Mark Zuckerberg going to bend the knee, if you will, with this incoming administration. What's your hope of what can realistically be done in the coming years as this problem worsens in the face of an administration that does not wish to regulate it at all?
So, Ali, I think that the best strategy is the one that Lina Khan has been employing in her case against Instagram, which basically says thou shalt not monetize the data of minors. You shall not collect it. It's a blanket prohibition of the behavior you dislike. I'm totally with Marianne that the challenges of age verification are a problem. So I would ban the business model for everybody because I don't want to get into the age verification discussion. Our problem is lack of political will. And I think in the incoming administration, our problems are going to be way more than lack of political will. So I don't know realistically what's going to happen in the United States. I do think antitrust will move forward. It's not clear to me how much of the problem antitrust can take care of. But I want to see around the rest of the world people engaging in this conversation, recognizing the flaws of the Australian law, but recognizing just as importantly how intolerable the status quo is and how important it is to challenge these companies, which are pretending that they're immune from any kind of regulation in any jurisdiction, which strikes me as just a terrible idea.
Marianne, I want to pick up on something you both said. I mean, Roger just said, have the world understand how intolerable this is, that we've got a business model that's causing us to process things in a way that perhaps our human brains, certainly mine, is not equipped to process the velocity and nonsense that comes across on social media. But how does that lead to you've just written a book, a new book about fearless speech. How does that bump up against people who say you can't regulate these business models because that's free speech?
Yeah, I think we have a tendency, and when I say we, pretty much everyone has a tendency to overreact to any kind of regulation of the internet or technology as being a violation of free speech. And in my book, I try to unpack why that's the case, that we have very, I think, dysfunctional views of what free speech actually is. We seem to think that if we can't post something on social media, we have some sort of limited access. That means that we've been sort of constitutionally or fundamentally harmed. And it tends to make us forget that that's what the industry wants us to believe, that the industry wants you to believe that nothing real happens unless you do it online. And that, of course, isn't true. The conversations that we have face-to-face, the conversations that we have in classrooms, the conversations we have in public spaces, those are really important and really vital. And we have been kind of led, I think, by the industry to think, well, no, come here, give us all of your thoughts here, express yourselves here, because this is the new public square, when, as Roger has written about extensively and others, that's not what these corporations who own these spaces are interested in. They're not interested in democracy or expression or art. They're really interested in you expressing yourself so they can monetize it and sell it. And so we really do need to have a kind of reorientation around how important speech is, but that is not meant to be coterminous with how important social media is. We need to make a distinction between those things.
And you do very well in your book. Thank you to both of you for being with us this morning. An important conversation that apparently we're going to have lots and lots more over the coming weeks, months, and years. Marianne Franks is a professor of technology and civil rights law at the George Washington Law School. She's the author of the new book, Fearless Speech, Breaking Free from the First Amendment. Roger McNamee is the co-founder of Elevation Partners. He's a former advisor to Mark Zuckerberg. He's author of the book, Zucked, Waking Up to the Facebook Catastrophe.